What is up, folks? It's the Emulsion podcast, hosted by chef and media producer Justin Khanna. That's me. The Emulsion is a result of my desire to educate, share, and personally keep myself up to date on stories stirring up the restaurant industry. I also sit down and interview remarkable professionals that are making exciting moves in their own unique and creative ways. Fine dining, chef swaps, new gear, critiques, professional performance, balance, hospitality, as well as the occasional rabbit hole are all just a few of the topics we get into here. With the goal, of course, being that you take off your headphones or get out of your car feeling smarter, more inspired, or more connected than when you pressed play. Whereas the long ad read, you will not find that here because the growing gang of amazing folks on Patreon make it possible for me to hit the publish button every single Thursday, and I'm eternally grateful for their support. But more on that after the show. I say it very early on in this interview, but if you're looking for chef advice or industry news, this is not, I repeat, this is not the podcast for you. I am joined by my fiancé, Anna, on this podcast episode. I proposed when we visited my mom in Maui in February. We had a fantastic time, and this episode is meant to serve a couple of functions. I know most of you have romantic interests in your lives in one way or another. You have boyfriends and girlfriends and wives and husbands and partners of all types, and I'm very proud of the fact that Anna and I have gone through our own trials and tribulations, our long distance for 5.5 years, our breakups and fights and struggles, and as with most stories with struggles, there are nuggets to be gained from that. So hopefully our story can help you, because unless you've got a master plan to not ever enter into a romantic relationship, I have a feeling you're going to deal with some of the problems that we talk about here. Reason number 2, maybe I sent you here. Maybe someday in the future you asked me a question about my relationship and I've sent you to this episode to get some more insight. That's why it exists. I don't publish a lot about our relationship on the interwebs for very specific reasons that I get into in this episode, so hopefully this episode and this conversation helps provide some clarity. Reason number 3, I mean, I've known for a while that I've wanted to marry Anna, that this isn't that big of a shocker, but I didn't want to get in the habit of having my quote-unquote girlfriends on the podcast, and now that I've committed to this wonderful woman, she definitely gets podcast clearance, so this is also part of that evolution. And last up, this is ultimately my show. I haven't done the best job of disassociating the Emulsion podcast from Justin Khanna. This has always kind of been me hosting. I've never ever had anybody else host this show, and I hope this can serve as a way for you to better get to know me, and especially with Anna being there at some of the meetups like the one we did in LA, I would like you to know a little bit about her. So if we ever get the pleasure of meeting someone like you in real life, that there is some context for you, not just on me, but on this other person that's also going to be there who also enjoys meeting folks like you. So this is that episode. I hope that you enjoy it. Please check back next week for our regularly scheduled industry style show. If you're listening to this podcast and you're here for chef advice or whatever, I don't think you're going to find that here.
Not on this episode.
I think we're going to talk about us and the fact that we just got engaged and kind of like set the record straight on a bunch of stuff and just make sure that like if people have questions about our relationship or how we met or how we like why I'm not dating another chef or how you deal with some of my crazy antics, I think this will be something that we can just point to and people will know exactly what we're talking about. So I pulled for questions. There's lots of questions.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to cover? Is there anything you want to like get out in the open or dispel or like you don't get any bad attention, which I'm very grateful to my audience for. But I don't know. Just should we start with who you are? Who is Anna Shields?
Well, your audience doesn't really know that much about me.
Yeah, they see you in this place called Videos as the girl that smiles and goes out to eat with me.
And drinks bubbles.
And orders sparkling rosé. That's all they know about you. So give us a little bit, give the world a little bit more.
The TLDR?
Yeah, what's the TLDR? Who are you? Who are you even?
Well, let's start with, I guess, what I do. So I am a pharmacist. I'm not a chef. I've only cooked for you 3 times, and none of those went well. So I take care of people, and I help them make sure that they have the right medicines and that they're working well for what we're trying to use them for.
But you're not a pharmacist in the sense of like you stand behind a counter and count pills, which a lot of people might think of when they think pharmacist.
Right. Pharmacists can do a lot of different things, but I used to work in a pharmacy like that, but now I work in primary care. So I support doctors, answer clinical questions for them, and then work with patients one-on-one to optimize their medicines, like I said, and make sure that we're getting the most benefit from those medications.
And when did that enter your life? Because that was before you and I met. You knew where you were going to college. You knew exactly what you were going to do. So like,
yeah. So I knew I wanted to be a pharmacist when I was a sophomore in high school, and that came from doing job shadows. So I was like my high school required volunteer hours to graduate, and so being the type A that I was, decided to use that time to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. So thought initially, like most kids, I think, that I would be a teacher.
Interesting.
And I spent a summer in a third grade classroom. And it was a nightmare.
Because why? Children?
Yes. And I favored...
Not your children?
Exactly. I favored the kids who liked learning, and I figured that probably wasn't going to be fair. So decided I didn't want to be a teacher, and knew I loved math and science, and so decided to volunteer at a hospital and thought maybe I'd be a nurse. So I worked in the transport part of the hospital, so I would move people to and from surgeries or x-rays or whatever. I also moved a lot of like supplies around and saw a lot of what nurses do, particularly around managing fluids of all kinds from all different areas. So, and I'm pretty queasy, and I'm a sympathetic vomiter, so
got it.
Knew that wouldn't work.
And you also don't like needles.
Right. Exactly.
Which is a large part of the job.
Exactly. So knew that nursing physically wasn't going to work.
And then background on my parents, both my parents were in medicine. And so that's something that you and I connect, because I was also going to go to medical school for a bit there, but I don't know. I knew it wasn't probably going to make me all that happy. Like, it would probably make me very fulfilled, and I would probably make some money, but it wouldn't have enough creative for me to be happy.
Fair.
But that's something that we connected very early on about, was the fact that, like, you knew gung-ho from the get what you were going to base your career on. And I was the same with food, where it's like, I was very similar. Sophomore year, I knew food was going to be a part of my life, and I was going to be a chef, and so yeah. So then I spent the following summer in the pharmacy at that hospital volunteering, and I thought I had the most important job because they trusted a high schooler to deliver medications to patient rooms, and I mean, I felt an immense responsibility, and like looking back, it's really funny because I remember things I was delivering. I was like, things for constipation. Well, that's what you, that's very much so a reflection of you, though, because like you're the kind of person who will take that and run with it, as opposed to some people will, like, I don't know, stage fright, or like, I don't know, get nervous.
I knew I wanted to be a pharmacist for a long time. Math, science. There's also an element of teaching when you really think about it. And then I also get to help people, which is something that I think has always been a passion of mine.
Sure. And I feel like we should also kind of like use this element to segue into the reason why I am so forward on content and putting myself out there, but you don't. And a lot of it is like patient based. Like you can't have your Instagram profile be public, because if a patient is dealing with an Anna Shields at the clinic, they can find you on the internet and harass you or compliment you or like all the things in between. And you don't want that. Right. So
yeah, I've had friends of yours ask me why I'm not the, pharmacist of the internet. And part of it's that. The other part is that like giving someone advice on how to cook their vegetables is like it's fine. There's no like risk, liability, blah, blah. Where in my world, if I make a blanket statement that this medication will solve this problem, which it might, but is it safe for you as a person, given all of your characteristics, age, weight, organ function, blah, blah. So it's like you could say yes or no to any of those questions, and it completely changes my recommendation. And putting that on the internet is not easy to do. It's why on like WebMD, everyone says at the end of the article, please consult a healthcare professional before using this as advice. Totally. And so it's like, why put all this energy into being the internet pharmacist or the pharmacist of the internet when
they could get you in
they
serious
still
trouble?
Need and they'd still need to come talk to me.
It's not the full picture.
Yeah.
But I think the reason that people say that, especially with like friends of ours that say that about you, is because you are very opinionated, you are very savvy, you're smart, and you have thoughts to share on certain things, especially like bigger macro trends. Chef Sammy Cooks wants to know how we met, so maybe that's now that people know who you are. Should we talk about that?
Yeah, you start.
Okay, so a lot of people think because of how long we've been together that we are high school sweethearts. Not true, because we didn't go to the same high school. And we actually met after we both graduated high school. So Anna's job during high school, though, was working at a department store in like our local mall. And there was this girl that I was friends with, and she went to high school with me, and she worked with Anna at this department store. So when this girl had her high school graduation party, I was there because I was her friend, and Anna was there because you were work colleagues. And we both connected over, I want to say, the fact that we were both going to out-of-state schools. Like, not a lot of Wisconsin people went to out-of-state schools. It's like, go to Milwaukee, go to Eau Claire, go to Madison. And you were like, I'm going to this place called Drake, and it's like the best pharmacy school program, like, this side of the country, or what, you know. And I was like, well, I'm going to the Culinary Institute of America. It's like the best culinary school this side of, you know, wherever. And we both connected over that a little bit because, I don't know, we're both go-getters, and we tried to get after it, and we knew again, back to that point of we both knew what we wanted to do with our lives. Yeah. And I don't know, did we flirt with each other? I don't think so.
Not at that party.
You're just very naturally friendly, outgoing. Yeah, you're a very social butterfly kind of person, and you'll connect over random stuff. And I don't think I thought anything of it either. I don't know. You were there with Kate, right? Didn't you come with Kate? Okay. So then there was another party where you played soccer. Yeah,
co-ed rec.
With another friend of mine who lived down the street from me. And there was a big soccer party, and it was a blacklight party. And you drew something on my back. It was like sexy or you're hot or something like that. And did we exchange information at Ashley's party or at the blacklight party?
Well, it might have been the second one. I don't know.
Anyways, there was no Instagram back then. There was no Snapchat.
It was Facebook.
Oh, yeah, so we connected over Facebook, and we started messaging, and we went on like one or two dates before.
The week before we moved to college.
That was it. You moved to Iowa.
Yep.
I was stuck in Wisconsin until November because that's when my culinary school started. And I guess we like kept messaging each other.
Yeah, but then I called you from college.
Oh, to end it?
Well, we had only hung out for the week before we went. And so I called you to say, hey, I'm the only person here from my school, and I kind of met somebody who I like, and maybe I kind of want to see how this goes and date people here for a while. And I don't really know what we are, but I like you, but you're going to be far away and I'm far away. And
I must have blacked out. I don't remember that phone call.
It definitely happened.
But we ended it.
But we stayed in contact.
Yeah.
That first year of college.
And to be clear, I was also like with another girl kind of ish, trying to make that long distance thing work. So because we were both from Wisconsin, when we would go home for the holidays from our colleges, we would be back in the same place together. And if you're bored or like you don't want to spend time with your family, and we would go hang out with each other.
And see movies.
And so yeah, the summer after our freshman year of college, I think is when we decided that like.
Yep, we went to the 4th of July together, and then started dating a couple days later.
Got it.
Officially.
So that was based on the fact that like we tried this whole let's see other people thing, even regardless of the distance, I don't think that you are someone that I, like, it's kind of worth it in a way, right? Like, even though there's some distance, I genuinely like things beyond being in the same physical space, right? Like,
That's because we had really good conversations.
Yeah, like we shared a lot of same values, and like we
That
were
was
able to
it.
talk like we were both on similar professional trajectories. Like, we were both very hungry and like
Yes.
motivated towards our careers. And
Yes.
would we go out to any crazy meals like out in those beginning days? Not really. I wasn't even cooking for you that much.
Well,
Was I?
but when I came to New York
Oh, yeah.
to visit you
Mm-hmm.
when we were 19
Yeah.
or 20, I don't know.
We would like try to order wine pairings at restaurants even though we weren't 21 yet, and like go out to nice tasting menus and take like water bottles of tequila to Union Square Park and eat Bauhaus.
That did happen.
Yeah. So we were trying to, I don't know, we were kind of crazy kids, but not really.
Yeah.
Because we were both like, we were both very like stressed out about the idea of ruining our careers, right?
Mhm.
So neither of us we're both very career focused, and that's what kind of kept us together, is the fact that like you could be my person to go to for like emotional support, to talk
Yes.
through certain things. You knew who I was, like you had a frame of reference of how I grew up,
Mhm.
like, but you were also willing enough to give me the space to say, I want to go to Chicago for the weekend. And it wasn't like, because we were both in the same, like, not talking to each other for 16 hours didn't hurt either of us.
Right.
And I think that laid the foundation towards like being able to make us okay over the
Mhm.
long term. I don't know. Do you have anything to add towards those early days? Because that answers the question of how we met.
Yeah. I think just the part you're kind of alluding to is just like having that stability in our relationship really, I think, at least for me, helped me feel comfortable and safe enough to continue to push myself towards my personal growth. I don't know if that was really a run-on sentence, but
No.
I mean that in the aspect of like I wasn't seeking a partner because I had you.
Mm-hmm.
I had that support. I had that person to continue to reinforce the choices that I was making for myself. That I wasn't feeling lost in terms of needing to find a relationship or someone to share my joy with and my sadness and all of that stuff. Because I had you, and even if you weren't physically there, emotionally you were.
And we bring it up all the time when people ask about like, so I guess to continue the story, I was in New York, graduated from New York. I went to Chicago, and I thought that was going to be the greatest thing ever, because you were in Iowa, and I was going to be in Chicago forever, is what I thought. And you were like a 6-hour bus ride away. That's like
awesome.
the closest we had ever been. And the shittiest part about that whole thing is you came to visit me like twice. I think I came to visit you once, and you came to visit
maybe twice
in like the 10 months that I lived in Chicago. And like, that was just a huge testament to the idea that like, just because like how head down we were, I think, is that like after a certain number of miles or a certain amount of time that it takes to get to someone, whether it's 10 times that, it doesn't really matter. Does that make sense? Like, if it's 4 hours away or 40 hours away, at a certain point it's the same. Does that make sense? Like, if I was living in South Korea versus living in, like, that's why Norway was able to happen. Is because at a certain point we just decided, like, unless you're just down the street from me, I'm probably not going to make the trek.
Because we had so much going on.
Yep.
In our own.
That's why California could happen. And
I mean, and I think also too, we weren't like, I think both of us were operating on the same like wavelength about that, that there wasn't like resentment for it at the same time.
Which was like weird though, because I don't think we ever had this strict conversation of like, listen, this is what's going to happen with my career. This is what's going to like, it was just like assumed.
Right.
Just assumed that like this is how it's going to happen, and like I'm invested in this and I'm going to go for this.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're along for the ride, that's great. And if not, I guess not. I'm trying to like think of how you can present that to your partner if somebody is listening and it's like, I want to go do this thing, but she's not or she or he is not necessarily like.
But I think we just always told each other like what was important to us at that time. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's within us. So in that, you know, we want these certain opportunities for ourselves, so we reciprocate that for.
Yeah, there's no resentment toward it, but and it's also not we're not keeping score. We don't keep score on that kind of thing.
Right.
Because for you doing your MBA and getting your pharmacy doctorate at the same time was like, I need 6 years to take care of this. Mm-hmm. And for me, like traveling and going to all these places and sometimes working for free and then like going international was what I needed. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I
never wanted to be told no.
Sure.
By you.
Sure.
And so I never did that to you.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
That's
like
super important.
There were certain things that I wanted for myself and I couldn't impose the opposite rule to you. Like it had to be the same. Mm-hmm. In order for me to, I don't know. Yeah.
No, it makes sense because if I say that I'm going to go to Norway for 2.5 years and then you say that you want to go to Florida or you want to go to Mexico or you want to go to Peru and I say, no, you can't do that. Like the hypocrisy is just like laughable, you know, because I don't know. We're both very.
Well, and it was such a concentrated time of like self-growth, development, change that like later in life, it is easier to have some of those conversations and say like, no, how does this affect my life? I have to think about that too. I think kind of in those early years, there is more freedom to follow that rule.
I mean, we follow the very conventional wisdom of maybe it's the everybody basically tells you that when you're young, you should travel because you don't have a house, you don't have kids, you don't have a large amount of responsibility to tend to.
Right.
So you should just go for it and take those opportunities. And that's essentially what we did. And some people say that that's like conventional wisdom, and some people think that that's like not the way because everybody tells you to just kind of go to school and graduate and get a good salary and get a nice job. But I feel like that was very instrumental in what kept us together is that confidence in each other and the trust and all of that. So that answers that question. So
long-winded answer.
A very long-winded answer. Sebastian had a couple questions. And his first one was there ever a time when Anna was fed up by Justin's career choice to be a chef? I was going to say from my memory, I don't think so.
No. I don't think I've ever been fed up in those words. Sebastian, did I cry a lot during the decision for him to move to Norway? Yeah, I did.
But that wasn't chef related. I could have been a scientist going to the Large Hadron Collider to do research.
Fair.
And
so
it was
not due to your career. Yeah,
correct.
You're right. No. I mean, that was the thing that when we met was this like really interesting, fascinating thing. Like, I'm going to culinary school. What? I don't know. So no, I've never been fed up with the fact that he's a chef or content person or.
Yeah, that's a good point. And
media.
Maybe some other people have asked that too, but like going through another career change.
I mean, there maybe was a time where you were on your phone a lot in the beginning of the Instagram stuff, and you were storying like every day or something. There were some times where it was like, dude, you got to put your phone down.
Because you're not that person.
Right.
You don't share a lot. You don't even like, I mean, like, you could be that person privately and share with your family or whatever. You're just like, you're very in the moment. And
I try to be present.
Yeah. And
with the people I'm around.
Totally. And so, yeah, that did cause a little bit of tension.
But
I don't
never fed up.
Yeah, you were never like, you need to stop this right now.
Yeah, no. Again, it goes back to that. I would never want you to say that. Tell me that.
And that would always dictate kind of like my behavior as well. And part of the reason why, like, this is the first time probably a lot of people have heard your voice outside of like being on an Instagram story. Like even the food vlogs when we're going out to eat, like I don't include your voice. Yeah, very, very interesting that's kind of like how that's developed. And so maybe like to clear the air on that whole piece, the reason that Anna and I don't have a cooking show together or like
is because I can't cook.
Partially, but also like where I didn't make a video of our engagement. I didn't like
because I wanted to ugly cry.
So you're getting all these reasons right now. And what basically it comes down to is the fact that some people have this very strict policy of like, I'm going to keep my relationship with my wife and my kids and my family off of the internet. And I respect that a lot. And there's other people like, I don't know, we've showed I showed you a couple of podcast episodes where people have their significant others on. And sometimes that's to genuinely get to know the person a little bit better. Sometimes it's for entertainment purposes. And I came to that realization that I never wanted our relationship to be entertainment for other people. Yeah. I never wanted the Justin and Anna show to be something that you could tune into and watch and get any sort of a rise or drama or whatever out of it. And that has kind of dictated my practice of putting our relationship on social media. Like I posted on Instagram that we got engaged. People very clearly know that we're together. Like I'll do
something. Were people like shocked? Like people no. Was anybody who...
I don't think anybody, and that's the other thing is that like
only because I know your community is really large.
Sure. Well, no.
Like, were there some people who didn't know at all?
No. I don't think there's any question that I have been in a long-term committed relationship. I also don't think that I allude to it in any way. At least I don't actively, like, I try to make sure that people know that, like, I'm in a relationship. We've kind of been together we've been together for a long time. We do this thing together where we'll go out to eat very often. That's what I share. And aside from that, I don't really think that people know that much, which is part of the reason why I wanted to record this, is so that people know exactly who you are and why we're together and kind of like a little bit of our story, because we do think that it's a nice story, and we do think that, I don't know, there's value. And of course, my little rants that I want to go on that we'll get into in a second, but where was I going with that? I don't want the content that I produce to be about us, not because I'm ashamed to be with you.
I don't think that.
Okay. Or there was a point when you thought that though, where you're like, why don't you put me in videos? Why don't you whatever? And I had to have that conversation of like, the second that I start to make you a valuable character in the content or like whatever, and people know that there's a emotional attachment between us, they will try to use that to get a rise out of me. Right? Like, I obviously think you're attractive, but some people will go into the YouTube comments and be like, your girlfriend is ugly. You know what I mean? And I've never had that, but I've seen it with other people's stuff. And there's that quote, the fool never learns, the smart man learns from his mistakes, and the wise man learns from mistakes of others. I heard that the other day. And so like I can see that these other people put their lives out there on the internet, and it turns into this thing that just spirals out of control. And I would never want that for us. Like, I never want that to be pillow talk that we have. I never want that to be a fight that we get in over, because I'm in complete control of that, what I put out there. So that's kind of like where my head's at with that. Let's keep it on Sebastian's tails here. He says, how has she observed the evolution of your career from CIA until now? This is good because I'm bad at remembering these things.
Well, what I remember from CIA is me coming to visit and you and Hubert hosting like a wine tasting in your dorm.
We did do that.
And like comparing the taste across pricing and what tasted, blindly. So sorry, this is very random, but
I mean, we were nerds.
like CIA days, like it was all about exploring, trying, tasting, doing, seeing, touching. You guys were always in the city, staging and all that stuff. And this was at the same time that I was also exploring pharmacy in all those different ways too. So those were days where we were just we were far apart. But as in terms of your career and transforming, I mean, not a lot of that has changed or gone away. It's maybe more
prevalent.
I was going to say more specific or targeted or strategic. Strategic. Yeah. Is the word. I think the one thing that's been so consistent across wherever you are, or one thing that you knew after moving to Chicago and then choosing to leave, was how important having people around you is. And that has been, I think, really influential in you making career decisions, is who are you working with?
Or who do what is my community? That's always been like a huge thing.
I know it's not necessarily like career, but it is.
No, it's something I value a lot, and I had to get it told to me by somebody else of like, wherever you go, you manage to build a community. It was very small in California. It got a little bit bigger in Norway, and now here it's like really. So yeah,
and in Chicago it was missing. So I think that's at least one thing that kind of sticks out to me. In terms of like cooking, I couldn't really tell you. I mean, sure, you've always cooked for me at home, and that hasn't, I guess, changed significantly over time.
Did you think that I would have a restaurant by now?
No. Sorry.
When did it hit you that I probably wasn't going to have a restaurant in the traditional sense?
When you got to Seattle. I think.
Okay.
Because there was, I think, a realization not just for you, but also for me. I mean, I don't know what it takes to open a restaurant. And I moved to Seattle thinking I was going to open a pharmacy, right? Like I did this residency program at a really innovative independent community pharmacy, and I thought one day I would open a pharmacy. That's what I was traveling towards when I got here. And I learned through at least my year of experience that like you can't just move into a city and open a business without understanding the landscape. And I learned how difficult it is to not even, like, I don't have the full comprehension, but I learned how difficult it is to run an independent community pharmacy in the city. And I think that realization kind of crossed over, and I watched it happen to you when you moved here. The realization of, I don't actually know what Seattle wants, needs, desires. And I think, you know, at that time I had given away my kind of dream about opening a pharmacy. I decided to work in the clinic instead, which I love. And so I don't regret that transition at all. I'm actually really thankful for it. And I guess I'm just not surprised that you experienced something similar.
Sure.
And are seeking a way to do it differently. Because doing it traditionally is hard.
Yeah. And crowded and competitive and all of that. Okay, last Sebastian question, because you tied right into it. What is more competitive, the pharma industry or the food industry?
Oh, God.
We've talked about a lot of parallels with this.
I think it's hard to say one is more than the other, but that they are both very, very competitive spaces to live within.
Like the tech space is super competitive financial, like on salary, because like if you work for Apple, Amazon can come and offer you double your salary to come work.
No,
for
we don't
them.
have that anymore. That's gone. It used to be that way. There were sign-on bonuses and people were paying you extra, giving you loan repayment. That's gone in our industry. So no, nobody's knocking down on the pharmacist door and saying, I'm going to pay you extra because I need you to work here to be a license. Mm-hmm. Those days are gone. So in that regard, that has made it more competitive because you have to differentiate yourself.
Got it.
As a pharmacist. You have to have an MBA. You have to have done a residency. You have to have been a leader for some organization at your college. You have to have done research or some 8 other things just to be interviewed. Mm-hmm. So yeah,
it is more competitive.
It's more competitive, but it's not competitive to get paid more. Mm-hmm. It's competitive to get a job you might be passionate about.
Sure.
Like the job that I have requires a lot of back experience and certifications and that kind of stuff. So it's competitive in a way that you have to really beef up your skill set.
Sure.
But I'm also in a union, so no. I get paid what everyone else gets paid. Mm-hmm. So, and that's just kind of think of a Washington thing. I'm not sure how many pharmacists are in unions and these days, but in the marketplace, I mean, pharmacy is a competitive marketplace. And we could go on a whole separate rant about all the pharmacy stuff, but we don't need to. Only from the standpoint is because we could talk about it for hours.
Yeah.
But, you know, there are really big players in the game who are eating up the little guys who are passionate about taking care of people because there's money to be made. But it's dangerous because it's removing what the pharmacist brings to the table by looking at what we do as a product and that we're selling a product.
The drugs.
Right. And I mean, we are, but really what a pharmacist does is a service. Mm-hmm. A pharmacist is making clinical decisions to make sure that the product you're picking up today is correct. Mm-hmm. And that's different. And when you rush that process, it can get dangerous.
I think most people know how I feel about the competitive side of the food industry, so we won't get into that. But that maybe will give you some insight into why we...
But I think they're both competitive. Mm-hmm. I think people who operate within both industries are competitive. Mm-hmm.
And it's why we had that mutual understanding back to like when we were in the beginning of our career.
Yes.
It's like, I need to put in a lot of legwork now so that I have opportunities later.
Exactly.
So that I can be competitive in the job market.
Yes.
When the time comes.
Exactly.
So that was...
But we were never competing with each other.
Yeah. Should we get into that? About like... One thing that I wanted to cover is dating in the industry, because there's a lot of people who like are super keen on being the chef pastry chef duo or the front of house back of house duo, and I think like there's only been one time when I've ever asked you to work an event or do a dinner, and it was because it was like a 300 person party by myself, and I needed help serving, and that's basically been the only time when we've ever like quote unquote worked together. Yeah. And I don't have the education to be help you out in any capacity. So like, well, my advice to everybody is to just kind of like know who you are intrinsically. And if you get so much value from having your partner be a part of your career, then you should. I could never personally do it because back to the competition thing, I'm way too competitive. Like if you were also a chef, I would want to be better than you. And that would cause a lot of tension in our relationship. And I don't think that is healthy. So that's why I choose, like, I like to think that I have the self-awareness to see that and know that it's probably a bad idea for me to date in the industry. So I don't. And the fact that your work has nothing to do with food, but we enjoy our leisure activities match up, aka going out to eat, spending time with friends. Traveling, movies, going to movies, I don't know, playing board games, whatever. It's going for a walk or you know, doing yoga or whatever. Hiking. Like any of that stuff.
For fun.
And it's not like that all matches up, so then
Mhm.
we can work together.
Yeah.
So my advice is to not date in the industry, because I know that I cannot date in the industry.
Yep.
But
I'm the same. You know that.
mm-hmm.
The thing about pharmacists is that, you know, we're perfectionists, and so when you leave work and you remember how pressured you were to get so many things done in the day, you start thinking about all the things that you missed, and then you start talking about clinical cases, and then that's all you do, and that's all you did all day, and then that's all you do all night, and it's just too much. I can't do it. I just can't do it, because it's what we did in college, right? Like, we would go to class all day, then we'd go intern, and then we'd come home and live with our pharmacy roommates, and we'd all share stories, swap all of it, and it's just exhausting. It's exhausting.
So for you to be able to come home and
not
literally, if you tried to tell me things, I would be useless. That's
I mean,
actually great.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that you can't, because like
I still have those people.
Yes,
That if I needed to get a thought out, I still have those people.
But I'm also there for you on like the more macro trends of like, I really screwed this up. I'm really struggling with this. I feel like XYZ person doesn't think that I'm XYZ. The
interpersonal stuff.
Yes.
Because really, chefing and pharmacisting isn't that different.
It's not. It's
the chef leads the team. The pharmacist leads the team.
Disguised as a service, or a service disguised as a product. Whatever you want to decide that is.
There's a hierarchy. There's a structure.
There's team dynamics. There's
processes.
There's having a knowledge of why things happen when you combine two things.
And science.
Same. And people are. I don't know. We are the only chef pharmacist duo that we've met.
He likes to say we're the FDA.
The FDA, Food and Drug Administration.
You know, living with other pharmacy students, I can't even imagine.
Sure.
And you know, they're off doing other things now too. So I'd like to say that we're all pretty successful and in similar roles, but you know, there's still that competitive thing there. I'm like waiting for one of us to be like, I'm a manager.
Right.
And then the other ones kind of like freak out about, oh my God, am I not doing enough?
But that's the beat.
And right now everyone's getting certified, and I'm not certified because I can't yet. And
sure,
it's just
but that's healthy competition, right? Unhealthy competition is when it plays into your identity a little bit too much. And I feel like the people who think of their relationships as their identity, that's when it can get harmful. And we've tried to stay away from that.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Your dad wants to know what's your favorite pie to eat.
Yours, Dad. Your apple pie. What's yours?
I like cherry pie quite a bit.
What?
I do. I like dark fruit pies. Like some of the Marionberry pies you can get out here are pretty good. I'm also not opposed to like pumpkin pie. Like any custard-based tart thing is pretty good. Lemon meringue. I don't know.
Maybe pie's just not.
I have a sweet tooth, so I'll take anything.
Oh, coconut cream?
Yeah, nah.
Oh.
Nah. I'd rather have the coconut cake.
That's kind of what I meant.
No.
I gift up.
Let's talk about work-life balance a little bit, because a lot of people had questions about hours. How do you keep the relationship work when working long hours in the kitchen?
Oh.
How do you keep the relationship alive? How do you keep things exciting? Blah, 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 blah. So, I don't know. I don't necessarily think we've ever went through a phase when we feel like it's dull. Have we? I mean,
only when you were gone for a really long time.
When it's like, it just seems like this mat, like you can't see the others. Like you're
but that was like distance in a way.
Yeah, like you're on a raft and you can't see land, right? Like you're paddling for what? Like you don't have anything to look forward to. But now, like, since we're in the same place now, I don't think we've had any sort of lull where we think that this is boring or.
Yeah, no. I mean.
So why is that, I guess? Why have we not? I think it comes down to just gratitude, like us being so grateful that we're actually here.
It's that thing that I always say.
Tell everyone what you always say.
Well, there's this thing when you're long distance for so long, 5.5 years, that like when you're finally in the same place, you're finally together and have each other, you just don't like care about some of the dumb stuff. You let it go because it's not worth your time or energy. Like leaving your socks on the floor, which you do. I mean, I could get upset about that. They're like, 5 inches from the hamper. But like, is it worth having that argument? Like, no, because I'll just pick up your socks because it means I also get to hug you today. Mm-hmm. And I get to see you and laugh with you instead of argue with you about your socks. Mm-hmm. So, because like for the last 5 years, I haven't seen your socks. Mm-hmm. And so I'll just pick up your socks and it's fine.
Totally. And I think that has kept things exciting more than, because
we're not fighting about stuff.
Yeah, like I went on this road trip where I was traveling for like a week, and it's like we're such wimps now. Like we can't.
I miss you.
Yeah, like we can't go longer than like, I don't know, 2 weeks feels like forever. Mm-hmm. And the longest we were ever apart was like 8 months.
Yeah,
right?
That was awful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was brutal. Mm-hmm. But I think, I don't know, I feel like we always have a trip on the horizon or something. Like there's always something
that
coming.
We both look forward to, right? Because it's like, if you looked at it as time away from work and I looked at it as a time to explore, and then we both went on the vacation, and then we both have different expectations. Like if you wanted to sit on the beach all day and I wanted to go explore, that would be a very different thing. But like we keep these things on the horizon that we both look forward to.
Yeah.
I think that's important to keeping things exciting.
And it doesn't have to be a trip. It could be like, trips. It was like when we moved
what too.
Like it was about
when we moved
creating
apartments.
A new space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just traveling.
Or like going to the Fifth Avenue Theater. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I bought a membership to the local theater this year.
Because we stopped buying clothes.
Yeah. So I had a new budget for fun things. Mm-hmm. So, I think it's about that, it's reallocating money for different things and, finding things that you both have an interest in. Doesn't have to necessarily be like a passion. It's not like you and I are like, oh my God, I love the theater. But we enjoy it.
Sure.
And so it's been kind of this fun thing once every month and a half or something.
And then when it comes down to the hours, I think it comes down to like, the thing that I always say is that like in the same way that you can come home from work and you know that your work is your work and it's a project that you go and spend time on and it provides fulfillment and you know what I mean? I think our relationship in my head is the same, and we both treat it like that, as this thing that you and I both work on, like this thing called a relationship, as opposed to like I'm yours and you are mine and you are my identity and like I need you. Like we've never used those words with each other. Like I need you. And I think that has been very, very valuable to make sure that if I can't come to a party, you don't feel like you're less of a person. Do you know what I mean? Like you are your own person. Yeah. And I am my own person. We just have this thing called a relationship that we work on to build and grow and whatever. And I think that is the reason why it's, I don't know. So that is my first tangent. But then in talking about hours, just having the knowledge to know that like we have a shared calendar, like that helps us a lot. I put a thing on my work calendar and Anna gets a notification about it to know that I have a 45-minute coffee meeting on Wednesday at 6 p.m. You know what I mean? So then she knows, well, like, oh, I got a request to go to happy hour. I should probably plan it on a Wednesday because Justin's not going to be home anyways. Right. And
so we align our schedules as much as we can. I mean, at least I do. You have maybe less flexibility for some of that, which is the name of the game. But so, yeah, I do try to schedule my happy hours or meetings or whatever appointments on days when you have, a dinner event happening, because it doesn't really matter if, I could come home and be alone, or, which I do sometimes, or I could get other things accomplished, and then that way when you have a day off, I'm also off and we can spend that time. So I work 9 to 5, and you don't. And so, I have the flexibility to do that. But it's even on weekends too. Like you have a trip upcoming, and right now people are asking me to make dinner plans, and I'm like, hey, maybe we make them in 2 weeks when I don't have him to cook dinner for me.
Smart. Makes sense.
So, yeah.
So I think that answers a lot of those questions. Do you have anything else to say on like schedule management or like long hours? I don't work that many long hours anymore. Like I have much more flexibility, but like there are nights when I work late.
I know when we've been asked this question before, I like responded back jokingly, live in a different time zone. But like kind of, I mean, you were working insane hours in Norway and I was 9 hours time difference away from you. So I didn't feel it as much because I wasn't there to see it.
Sure. You were sleeping during the time that I was working. No, that's true.
Yeah. And that was probably our most challenging time because someone was always waking up or going to bed on those FaceTime calls.
Every day. We'd FaceTime every single day.
Yeah.
That's something that like doesn't get told as part of the story is like, could we have done this back when you used to have to write letters to each other?
We did write letters in the beginning.
Yes. But like when that was our only way of, if that was our only way of communication, I don't think we could have done it.
Right.
Like being able to see your face every single day.
Yep.
And say good morning and say good night and hear about, I mean, we wouldn't even like, there's stories that you will tell me about from your university days, and I don't remember them happen. Like you wouldn't tell. Like we were so head down that I don't know. Like we didn't talk about that many things because it's like, we didn't have the time to. Like I didn't have the time to tell you about my day, which was also kind of beautiful because then it's like, I feel like there's a lot of couples who will go through like, you sit across from each other and complain for a long time, and we didn't have time. We didn't have time. So it's like, tell me the macro of what happened last week. You know what I mean? Like, tell me the wins, tell me the pitfalls. Like, and it wasn't like delusion. It was just the idea that like, I only have 25 minutes to talk to you because it's 11 p.m. here and you're just waking up and you have to go to work. What are we going to talk about? You know?
Yeah.
I think that's important to kind of like slide in there and just make sure that everybody knows actually happened. Amanda wants to know, being a chef and dealing with Anna turning into a gremlin when she's hungry. What happens when you get hungry? And what
you're not you when you're hungry. Have a Snickers. Yeah, I'm not super nice if I don't eat on time. I wake up starving, and Justin makes me breakfast. My mom says I'm a dragon. So the Anna dragon, first thing in the morning. Well, and I say because when you're sleeping, you were just fasting for like 8 hours.
Break the fast.
Exactly. See? So I do need to be fed relatively quickly after sleep. So for breakfast. And then I'm the kind of gal that likes to eat every 4 hours. It doesn't have to be a huge meal. I'm a grazer. So I do give warnings though.
It's true.
Okay, so I do give a little notice that I'm getting hungry. And then another notice, and if there's a third notice, it's probably not a good situation.
Yeah. Which only comes into play when we're traveling, because you're pretty good at taking care of yourself throughout the day.
Yeah.
But like when we're traveling and we don't have a fridge full of food or...
That's true. Some of my friends wonder why I'm asking about the next meal during the current.
Chef Cliff Smith wants to know what's the best/worst thing I've had you try.
Oh. I mean, I eat everything. I try everything. That was always my mom's rule. You have to try everything once. It doesn't mean you have to like it. So, but I do think it's weird.
Have I served you a dish at a tasting menu event that you haven't liked? I think I have.
Where?
I don't know. I'm asking. Like during a pop-up that I've done. I can remember specific times when you've given feedback that you didn't like certain dishes. But I don't think I can remember what dishes those were.
Oh, I don't know. Sorry.
It's okay. I just don't want people to think that, like, I don't know, you're giving me any delusion.
Oh, no.
That my food is amazing and whatever. Like, you're very quick to tell me.
I'm very particular about textures, which you know, but other people don't know.
So I take that feedback with a grain of salt. If I serve a panna cotta because she doesn't like yogurt, right? So trying to keep that in check. But also, like, some of the raw fish or raw meats, and that's very texture-based.
Yeah.
But I don't think anything comes to mind was, like, the worst thing I've had you try. What's the best thing I've had you try? Where, like, we've been out somewhere and...
This is such a hard question to, like, ask on the fly. I don't keep a immediate catalog.
I think the first time you had a queen yaman, you were pretty happy.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
And we've had a really good time, like, trying different coffees that we make for ourselves. I think that once we discovered, like, what kind of coffees we like, that was a really big moment.
Fair.
Yeah.
You made me like radishes. I used to hate them.
I don't think that was me. I think that was just you. Repetitive.
That's true.
It's not like I cooked with radishes all that often. No, if anything else comes up with best worst thing that I've had you try, interrupt me or interrupt yourself. So the other thing I was going to chat through is just dating a chef in general, because there are a lot of chefs that are going to be listening to this show, and I'm curious to hear from your perspective if there's anything that chefs can do better to make them more stable partners. Like, as someone who... I'm the first chef that you dated.
Yeah, the only one.
And so what is... I don't know. What have you seen based on other chef friends of mine who have been in relationships, or like...
But this is like in any relationship. I feel like it's not just chefs who want to maintain a relationship. It's like it always comes down to communication. Always. And women can be better at it too sometimes. But I think that's one thing that that was the only thing we had for so many years, was literally just communicating verbally. And expressing your feelings, whether they're good, bad, ugly.
So like learning how to talk to each other.
Yeah. I think that's, I mean, it's super underrated.
But chefs can be really bad at that, right? Like it's the reason that some chefs don't like going in the dining room, because they don't like being able to talk about story. Like, they don't like that. So, I don't know.
I have to practice.
Would you add anything else about, like, what you do outside of work? Like, we bond a lot over meals. Like, going out to eat together is, like, one of the reasons why we were able to stick together, because it's, like, when we go on a trip, which was a lot of, like, the only time that we would see each other when we were first dating, is we would relish over these meals that we'd go have. So...
But that's because you would teach me things.
And that would bring us closer.
Yeah.
And it was also, like, I got to share the experience with somebody else as opposed to, like, doing it by myself. So I guess it doesn't have to be going out to eat. It can be learning an instrument or dancing or whatever. Like, you don't have to go broke going around town having tasting menus.
Right, it's true.
To have a successful relationship, but...
I also think, like, in any relationship, it's also, like, trust is critical.
Totally.
For both people. And demonstrating that you trust somebody.
I think another thing, back to that thing that we share a relationship, we don't share an identity, is that I think we respect each other more than we let on.
Absolutely.
And it's a word that we don't really say that often because I feel like it's just kind of like assumed.
Mm-hmm.
But we respect each other a lot, I think.
Mm-hmm.
There's no like hierarchy. We're both the same on the same level.
Mm-hmm.
We like. There's not a leader and a follower. There's not a, I don't know,
I think
head of the household. There's not.
Yeah.
And that's helped a lot.
Right.
Because then the expectation is very clear that like what you expect from me, I can expect from you.
Exactly. But I also think we work really hard to make the other proud of us.
Totally.
And we say it. Like,
yeah, it's not a weird complex that we have where it's like, I need validation from you. It's just intrinsically like, I want to make you proud. That's okay. Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think like hearing it both directions is important. At least it has been for us. So tell your partner that you're proud of them. And not like good job for taking out the garbage. But like, you know, when you see them putting in the time on this project or whatever and they're killing it, like it feels really good to have that validation. And to give it. It feels really good to give that validation to somebody else.
And maybe that comes back to the competitive thing of like, if you're competing too hard with somebody else, you're less likely to give up that praise because it's an ego thing where if you're giving out that praise, that means you're not getting it. And it's like, I'm totally happy giving you praise because I don't feel like that's being taken away from me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I think, okay, sorry. One other thing that chefs can do is like make time. It can be that 10-minute FaceTime call. It can be a text message. You know, I always knew you were thinking about me when you did that. And it wasn't this weird, like, clingy thing. That's not what I'm getting at. But, like, making time is nice.
Sure.
And I had another one, but I forgot.
It's okay. You can think more about it. But, yeah, I think that's important because if there's going to be a 14-hour stint where I'm probably not going to answer any of my text messages.
And be open about that. I'm about to go into this 14-hour thing. Tell me. Otherwise, I'm going to worry about you, and I'm not going to know who you are, and I'm going to call you a bunch, and you're going to get really annoyed. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's important. It's important.
That transparency
yeah, and
is helpful.
Yeah, I think that can be really hard for some chefs to kind of like come clean with that, or like even admit that they need a partner, because like, I don't know, we're all human. We all like desire connection and to be heard and feel loved and all of that.
I think we're still learning too, so we're not like experts, but these are the things that we've...
At the same time though, like, and this is something that we haven't gotten into yet, you have this great piece about fear of missing out and the antithesis of that. So can you dive into that a little bit? Because I think that's very, very valuable for people to hear.
Well, comes from the question of like, how are we still together after all this time? Or how can you stay committed to one person?
During long distance, usually.
Yeah.
When that question gets brought up.
Yeah, during the long distance thing. And I, say that that's because a lot of people in our society in today's world, and not just today, but whatever, there's this FOMO thing, like that fear of missing out on what could be, or the next person, or tomorrow, or...
I use the grass is always greener syndrome of like, the second you see a problem in your relationship, you think of, oh, well, like if your girl has problems with constantly going out and spending too much money, the second you see someone who doesn't do that, you're like, oh, well, I should be with her. When in reality, girl number 2 comes along with her whole entire other set of baggage.
Mm-hmm.
Good and bad.
Yeah.
So.
Well, so where I'm going with that, the fear of missing out, is like when you're in a relationship like ours, like I have a lot of JOMO. Like I experience a lot of joy of missing out. And that I'm in a very joyful place and I don't have that fear of missing out on the next person or the next thing because I don't know what that might be, like you say.
It's the idea that we have so many friends who will complain to us about, oh, I had this really bad date, or like, oh, I'm going through this thing with this person, or like XYZ wants to move in with me, and we get to a point where like we can't relate. Like we don't have, like, yes, we have empathy because we've been in relationships before each other, which also kind of like gave us the clarity to know that each other was the one, because we know what the alternative looks like. But also, like, I don't spend, like, if someone that was actively dating broke down how much time and money they spent per week dating, I can't, like, you can't get that time back. You know what I mean? So, like, the fact that I don't have to worry about the hour leading up to a date that I have on Friday night and the $80 that's going to cost me is incredible, right? Like, I would rather spend that money and that time with you, and it's guaranteed that I'm going to feel fulfilled at the end of it.
Yeah.
It's like a roulette thing, right? Like, you're going to give up your time, you're going to give up your money in hopes that it's going to make you feel better than you do right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then, like, going through breakups and, like, trying to navigate the dating landscape in 2019, like, we don't know. We don't Tinder wasn't around when we, you know? So, just an interesting.
Well, and bringing up Tinder, I always go on my spiel about that too. With like relationships and dating today is like, it's kind of crazy. Like he said, it's not relatable. We can't relate as well as maybe we should. But it's like you have all these filters and buttons you can push to find this person who is the dream boat for you. But like there's this belief that that dream person is gonna pick all the boxes that land on you as their dream person. Like there's no rule out there that says like your dream candidate is going to love every single thing about you. There's this belief that if I pick this perfect person on paper, that
it's going to be rainbows when you see each other for the first time.
Well, but that like it's going to be perfect on both sides. And it's not necessarily true. And most times it's not.
Right. And because you can go through that process of getting to know someone through the phone, this is in air quotes, getting to know someone through looking at their Tinder page. Yeah. It's not real. Because like a lot of times, and in the way that we got to know each other, the way that you learn those things was through conversation. And then you learn all these other nuances about a person to kind of like, and it goes both ways. But being able to learn about the fact that this person loves sailing and dogs and is a marketing VP at a large tech company, like you used to have to ask those questions, and now you can just read them with like their favorite photos that they've taken of themselves over the past 3 years. That's not real.
Like Tinder makes it so much more difficult to accept somebody's imperfections. It makes it so much harder for, wait, what did I just say?
Tinder makes it so much harder to accept someone's imperfections.
Yes. I agree with myself.
I agree with what I just said.
No, so it's like, it's harder for someone to accept your imperfections, but it's also harder for you to accept theirs.
Because you've already painted the picture in your mind.
That they're perfect. Right. So there's this like, this really difficult, I don't know. I just think
it's a lack of everything that we've talked about as far as like transparency and trust and communication and like,
yeah,
because it's not.
Where during those conversations, like you discover all these things that you really like. You learn a few that you don't, but then you get to kind of weigh which ones am I willing to accept. And you can still do that on Tinder. There are people who have really great relationships who met on Tinder. I don't mean to like,
we're not judging
shit on Tinder, but it's just this weird thing.
So what would you suggest in 2019 that people do to meet?
Talk to each other at coffee shops. Like, be nice to each other. You know, open the door for somebody. I know that's just like a really weird, dumb, fucking cliche thing to say, but you know, like, make small talk with somebody on the subway, but like, don't be creepy about it. You know, talk to people at your mutual friends' parties who you don't know. That's what we did.
You're seeing the result.
But, you know, your friends are great filters, right? Like, if they have somebody at a space where you are also, there's probably a reason why that person is a part of their life.
Right.
Should they be a part of yours? Maybe.
And then just follow everything else that we talked about here of, like, being transparent about the fact that, like, I can only go on dates on Mondays because I work 6 days a week. Yeah. And I probably won't answer your text messages.
Yeah.
Because how many friends have we had that go out on dates and they're like, the person never texts me back. It's like, well, have you asked why they're not very good at texting?
Right.
Just interesting.
Sorry.
Expectations versus reality.
I feel weird talking like an expert. I'm not an expert.
This
is our story.
This is our story, but also, like, if you have one successful restaurant, people won't normally ask you about all the failed restaurants you've had.
Fair.
They just want to know about how did you build this successful restaurant.
And
I don't know. I guess, like, to maybe tie a bow on this conversation is, like, a lot of people come to us and say, like, we're about to go long distance. You guys did it really well. What is your advice? And a lot of times we give the advice of, like, from the get, you can pretty much know if it's going to work out or not. Like, are you the type of person that can realistically withstand a long distance relationship? Right? Like, if your quote unquote love languages are physical touch, you're probably not going to do that well.
Well, that's not fair.
Because yours is. Yeah. True. So why do you think that it worked then? Because we were ready from the get. Like, from my perspective. I don't know. We had some rocky times.
Because I didn't get to see you for 8 months, and my love language is touch. So there's that. But I don't think there's a real. There's not a rule book code.
Sure.
You both have to be invested. You both have to want it, and you both have to be okay with it being kind of
different than everybody else's relationship. Yeah. Is there anything that we didn't cover?
I'm sure.
Well, it's okay. We can have this conversation again when.
Aren't there more?
No, that's it.
Are you sure?
Best worst thing I've had her try. Pie, schedule management, how did we meet? Fed up with career choice. Evolution from CIA till now. More competitive. Gremlin when she's hungry. Work-life balance. Relationship while working long hours. How do you keep your relationship fresh and stay committed to just one person? And the person that asked says that I need to factor out that I am that person. So the question is based on monogamy versus polyamory and how we just decided that we're going to be committed to each other forever as long as we both shall live. So they say. I don't know. Do you have thoughts? It goes back to that JOMO thing for me. Like,
yeah.
Yes, I could have multiple sexual partners and I could find a lot of pride in that, and the main argument that gets tossed around a lot, especially now that this is gaining popularity, is the idea that, like, I don't wrap my identity in the fact that you choose me as your, like, the idea that you and I can have our relationship, but then I also have the confidence to know that you can go out and have relationships with other people, and you will continue to come back to spend time with me. That's where like the source of pride is, and that's supposed to be like this crazy Zen moment where everyone's like, oh my God, this is way better than having just one partner. And I don't necessarily think that would bring fulfillment to me. I think that we're in a comfortable enough relationship where like you can walk up to someone at a party that is a heterosexual male that is dressed very nicely, and you can give him a compliment and it doesn't hurt me. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And I can be walking down Venice Beach and say that a girl looks attractive, and it rolls off both of our shoulders. You know what I mean? Where we don't punish each other for, you know what I mean? Because like, how can you know that you're happy where you are if you live in a silo, right? Like, because I can look at girls that like, there are more attractive guys than me, and there are more attractive girls than you. That's not the point. Because a lot of it comes down to like these weird surface level dynamics of like, what you're basically saying in that polyamorous relationship is there are things that you can't do for me that I need to go somewhere else to get.
Which for me is not a nice feeling.
Yeah. For
personally.
Both of us. And that's for both of us. And other people are different, and other people value different things. But yeah, I don't think for us we could.
Like, I take that personally. That like almost in your face, you're not enough. Kind of, that's the message I would receive. Might not be what you're saying, but it's how I would receive that message.
Sure. And that's the whole point of the movement, is to show that you are enough based on who you are, but to acknowledge the fact that you can't be everything for someone. And that's the idea. But we've shown the opposite. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's not, it might grow in popularity. And the other thing that gives it some legs to stand on is the idea that in other cultures, if like we lived in a small tribe where we would all kind of like intersexually have relations with each other, if you were to get pregnant, you would have multiple males that would help raise your child. And that's supposed to be better for the kid, quote unquote. And that's the other thing that's like supposed to be better, and why people say that. But the fact of the matter is, nobody lives like that. Like, we don't live in compounds. We don't live in shared living spaces that facilitate that. So yes, it kind of makes sense to have multiple figures in that child's life.
But people also used to live closer to their families. Like, I think about my extended family, and there are a lot of them. And a lot of them are still in the same place. So like, you don't have to necessarily be in a polyamorous relationship for your children to be supported by multiple adult figures. I mean, even in my childhood, I had my parents and their best friends and all of their kids. I mean, I always joke I have more than one set of parents because I did have other adults making sure that I was,
growing up to be a good person.
Yeah,
it's true. I don't know. Do you have thoughts on polyamory, monogamy? How do we stay committed to just one person?
You make a promise, not just to the other person, but to yourself.
That's important.
And probably to yourself first. I mean, obviously, but I think, it's a hard question for anybody to like put words on. But
we should talk about our parents too, because like, I didn't grow up. From the moment that I have memories, my parents were always separated. And so my motivation on being in a monogamous relationship with you is to do better than my parents did. That's been my goal for a long time. Like, my dad was an only child. They grew up too poor to have more children. And so he had his friends, and he kind of like, he grew up alone. My grandma had multiple husbands, and the cousins that are in that side of the family aren't very close with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I grew up having this very distorted view of what a family could be, and I see the value in it so much that I see one direct, very proven path to creating a nice family that I would be proud of is to be in a monogamous relationship. So like in a more macro sense, us being in the relationship that we're in helps facilitate that. And then you're similar, but your motivations come from seeing it work.
Yeah. I mean, my frame of reference is my parents being married for the last 30 some years.
Yeah.
And them being high school sweethearts and being like actually in a loving relationship for the last 40 some years, which is crazy. But so for me, that's what it's supposed to be. Yes, I have had friends and family members who have not had that experience. That's true. But I aspire to have what they have because it's not always perfect, but they're your family. And like, it's that one thing I've always wanted for us, and now that we get to do and be. And so for me, it's almost impossible to see how someone could give themselves to multiple people successfully without it being emotionally draining. Draining is maybe not the word.
It would be very draining.
Taxing. Like,
it'd be very taxing and be very distracting.
Because again, it's that constant, I'm not enough. You're not enough for me. I'm not enough for you. Let's have all of this happening all over. And if that's what works for you, you've figured something out that I have not, which is fine.
Because there's no right way.
There is not one right way. And I just don't know that I have the capacity. And I feel that I would carry insecurity with me in a relationship like that, where with you, I have insecurities and you know what they are, but I don't walk around feeling them. And I don't walk around having you point them out to me.
And there's something about like...
And that makes me feel safe.
Sure.
And when I feel safe, I feel like I can give more of myself to you.
And that provides speed and clarity and like helps with decision making and being able to plan and like all of that. Yeah, makes sense. So the ultimate goal of this podcast was to talk about our engagement, which we didn't really talk about, but that doesn't really need to be a story that we talk about. We're engaged.
He did drop the ring in the sand. I
did drop the ring in the sand. In all fairness, though, you elbowed it out of my hand.
But you found it.
I did find it. To kind of announce that and like get people to know a little bit more about you and about our relationship and like fizzle out any questions or rumors or like, I don't think there was any of that ever floating around, but I just want to be able to like, if anybody has any questions of like, how did you meet? How did you whatever? I want to be able to point to this as like, so the question then becomes, is there anything that we didn't cover that you see coming up as far as like questions from people that you just want to like address here?
Oh, like right now?
I don't. I've said everything I need to say. When are we getting married?
Fall of 2020 is the plan.
The tentative date is fall of 2020.
Not sure when specifically.
Are we planning on having kids anytime soon?
No.
That was very fast and furious. I like it.
Yes, no?
Yes. Yes, kids. Not anytime soon. I think that's it for us. You want to leave anybody with anything? Advice? Thoughts?
Love you, Mom and Dad.
There you go. What's for dinner tonight?
What's in the fridge?
Lots of salad stuff.
Salad?
Hey. All right, that's it. As I mentioned in the interview, most of Anna's socials are private for work reasons. If you ever see us traveling in a city through like my Instagram stories and you want to meet up, I'm pretty confident that we will take you up on your offer, as long as you're not being creepy about it. We love meeting new people, so don't be shy about it. You probably won't see her on the show again until we start to plan for having our first child, which, as I said in the interview, is a little ways down the road, and we're pretty mutually in agreement about that. So until next time, thank you so much for listening to this kind of weird and very personal episode of the Emulsion podcast. Roll the outro. We did it. You're in outro land now. Thank you so much. I appreciate your ears more than you'll ever know. Hey, by making it to the end, you're the type of person that I want to speak to directly. This little production is constantly growing. If you enjoyed this episode, if you like what I'm trying to do with this show and want to make sure more people can find us, a free way to help out that takes less than 3 minutes is to leave the Emulsion a great review on iTunes. If you didn't enjoy this show, please also leave a review. I'm happy to take any constructive feedback you've got. If you want to learn more about supporting this show with your hard-earned cash, patreon.com/Justin Khanna is the place to do that. I've got tiers starting at just $1 per month. Let's say you just like being involved through suggesting stories to be covered or asking questions to my interview guests. You can stay up to date by following along on Twitter or Instagram. That is linked up in the description for your convenience, or always available on justinkhanna.com. If you're on YouTube and listening, you can take this show on the go because this is available on all podcast platforms, including Spotify. And if you prefer video versions of things like my interview shows or the shorter intermezzo episodes, and you're listening audio only, please check out my YouTube channel to see more of that. Now's normally where I'd say my name is Justin Khanna, and I hope you have a good one, but you've probably got another podcast episode to listen to, so I'm just gonna get out of the way here. Excuse me. Pardon me.